HIV onto her child. Three ways. One is she does not come into the antenatal clinic in time, and she waits until the time of delivery to get healthcare services. There's a possibility at the time that baby is born, while coming through the birth canal, blood can get in the baby's eyes, ears, mouth, or nose, and the infection of HIV can take place. Or after the baby is born, and the mother goes ahead and breastfeeds that child. A continuous dose of breast milk contains a high concentration of HIV that can cause that child to become infected with HIV. And so those are the ways we talk about when we talk about the transmission of HIV.
Okay, let's go straight to the line. You're listening to Matters of the Heart. Welcome to the show. Matters of the Heart, welcome to the show. Now, I can hear that your voice is breaking up just a little. It may be a cell phone call. And I believe it's from the family violin. Okay, I'm sorry. If you will, can you call right back afterwards, please? I know for whatever reason we're not able to make that connection. Let's go to the next call. Okay, let's continue here. By the way, the telephone number 326-JAMS, 326-JAMS, and we have a rolling line, so you should not have a challenge being able to get through. Our topic today: would you date or marry someone who is HIV positive? And my special guest right now, I have Keith Kemp. In a moment, we're going to welcome back Lalisa and Daryl, an amazing couple that's certainly one that you need to meet. For your comments, your questions, 434-2958 by text, 434-2958, or 466-4751. And, of course, there will be a CD and a DVD copy of the show available later on, so I'll be able to tell you more about that at the end of the show. And let's go straight to Facebook. Going first to Shanta. Shanta said, "No, that's not love," she feels. "He must first love himself in order to love another. Here we are trying to teach generations about safe sex to avoid catching or spreading HIV." And it goes on. And I think she is expressing her thoughts. I think it's somewhat critical. But she is then responded to by Saran, who says, "Like I said, it takes a big soul. I know a family that just adopted 2 children with full-blown AIDS into their home. They already have a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old. Just imagine what kind of love you have to in order to do that." Going further, let's go to Giovanna, who also posted here. She says, "I won't comment on the love aspect of it, but I wanted to chip in and add that it's possible to be HIV negative and involved exclusively with an HIV positive person, and the negative person to not contract the HIV virus, just as it is possible for an HIV positive woman to get pregnant and have birth to an HIV negative baby." Now, of course, we have a very real example of that here today. If she maintains her medications and the treatments, she can lead a very healthy and long life. She'll probably outlive many of her peers who are HIV negative, the way violence has taken over our country, she said further. "I worked very closely with one aspect of the HIV/AIDS Center here in Nassau and in Canada. I have a colleague whose primary area of research is about HIV and stigma. I've also had the privilege to get first-hand statistics about transmission of HIV in the Bahamas. The virus is lifelong, but fortunately, it's no longer a mandatory death sentence. It's scary, but so is diabetes and heart blood pressure, which probably takes more lives than HIV." She said, wow, awesome.
Well, yeah, it's a mouthful. But what I want to say, Kirk, as I leave you guys today is simply this, one must always remember that when we're dealing with persons living with HIV, we're dealing with human beings first. That's the first thing. And one must remember that if you are put in this position today, how would you want people to treat you? How would you want people to react to you? How do you want people to deal with you? Could you imagine all of your life you helped people? When they needed a ride from work, you gave them a ride from work. When they needed sugar, you gave them sugar. When they needed money, you loaned them money. All your life, you helped people. And for some misfortune, you ended up in the hospital. And all those hundreds and thousands of people who you helped, none of them came to your hospital bed to bring you a $1.50 bottle of water. How would you feel? You would feel like giving up on life. You feel like nobody loves you, nobody cares about you. And you probably sit there and die from the mere fact that this is the view that people have towards you. We need to break that barrier and that stigma as it relates to HIV. We're dealing with human beings. We're dealing with people who have had a misfortune of contracting a virus that is more manageable than any other virus I know. You can manage HIV. You can live a long, healthy, productive life with HIV. We have children in this country who were born with HIV positive, now 22 and 23 years old, living with HIV and continuing to live and looking healthy and strong. And not just looking healthy and strong, Kirk, they are contributing to the development of this country called the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. And so I always quote a good something from Dr. Miles Monroe that says that the wealthiest part of a nation is in the graveyard. The wealth of a nation is in the graveyard because of so much ideas and so much things that could have happened but didn't. And we have people today who are living with HIV, who are developing and who are contributing to this country. And so when we talk about the whole thing about HIV, everyone has the right to choice. Plain and simple. Everyone has the right to choice. And no, there's nothing wrong with living or marrying someone who's HIV positive, because again, if you put safer sex practices in place, you would not contract HIV. We need our people to be educated, you know. I'll say something that's a little controversial, but, you know, I'll say it for the sake of saying it, but we always try to look at HIV as something where husbands who are unmarried stepping out on their wives, or people who are not in a marital relationship having sex. And so many people say, you know, HIV is this thing that happens to people who step out of the marital bounds, and the list goes on and on. But the question is, what about the woman who was at home keeping the marital bounds, keeping her marital vows? Should she be stigmatized and discriminated upon? And again, what about the child who was born with HIV, who had no choice in the mother? Should he or she be stigmatized for HIV? These are questions as a people we need to ask ourselves. And when we find the answers to these questions and we really search within our hearts, we need more compassion.
And then in addition to that, what happens if, somebody in their life decisions, for whatever reason, let's say they were not as responsible as they should have been in their sexual decisions. That person still has a right and a need to be respected. And valued as a person.
Correct. And so, you know, that's something important we need to take a look at. And so as a people, as a country, as we continue to celebrate World AIDS Week, and we continue to go in the whole celebration of World AIDS Week, I want persons to continue to hear the message about HIV. You know what grieves me, Kirk? What grieves me is that every year we celebrate World AIDS Week. And every year we get to this 1 year for World AIDS Week, you got people and you got church leaders, you got politicians, you got leaders throughout the country. And when you get to that particular year, some of these leaders look at us like, this again? This again? More about AIDS? We got to hear about AIDS again? When we can stop? You know, let me tell you something. If we stop talking about AIDS, and we stop the fight against HIV and AIDS, the country called the Commonwealth of the Bahamas is going to have a very serious problem.
At one point, we were number 1 in the Caribbean, and then we were number 3. Where are we now?
The Bahamas stands at number 3 in the English-speaking Caribbean as relates to HIV. And one of the things we need to look at, too, when we talk about what's happening in the Bahamas, let's look at this. In the Bahamas today, between the ages of 15 and 29, AIDS is the leading cause of death in this age group.
15 to 29.
29. When we look at the Bahamas today, between the age group of 15 and 44, these are the greater number of persons who account for the number of HIV and AIDS cases in our country. And so when we talk about HIV, HIV must be preached in our schools. It must be talked about in our churches. It must be talked about in our homes. HIV is something that we can't continue to turn a deaf ear to and wait until someone we know is infected with HIV, and then we start to try to find the information. We want to put prevention in place. We want to put prevention in place that before your child hits 12 years old, he or she knows the modes of transmission for HIV. We want to hit HIV from all sectors of society and getting the message out there that 1, HIV is real, 2, HIV is not a death sentence, and 3, persons can live a long, healthy, productive life with HIV.
My special guest was Mr. Keith Kemp. In a moment, we're going to invite Lolisa and Daryl back to our microphone. For those who are watching online, of course, it's mattersoftheheartlive.com. On that same site, you will scroll down to the mid to bottom part of the page, and there is a collection of resources, a number of websites, including pause.com, where you can find information about HIV and AIDS, the Caribbean Center, CAREC, I believe it's called, and that website is there as well, and a number of other resources, including counselors in the country that you can access for information and advice. And that's not just in terms of HIV and AIDS, it's about life. We're talking about life when we talk about relationships. It's not a matter of whether a relationship exists, it's just a matter of whether it's healthy or not. When we come back, we will welcome Daryl and Lolisa back to the microphone and to the cameras, if you will. And just as we prepare to go to that break, Eva said on Facebook, hats off to both of them. At least they both know what they're getting into. She's honest. What about those who aren't? And she ends her thoughts in saying, I've learned life is to be lived. The only constant in life is change. So enjoy life, please. Miss said, unconditional love is a kind of love Jesus had for us. And if we would know him and have faith in him, all things are possible. It's a matter of the heart. More when we come back.
Oh, like just because HIV, you should treat them a certain type of way. I guess it's just all on how you grow up or how somebody have taught you in your life. I was always taught that everybody has the right to shine. Everybody has a right to a nice life or a beautiful life. So that's just the way I was born, or I mean the way I grew up. I was never told that a person with HIV is a person you can't touch or a person that you can't have a friendship with or even work with.
You met Lolisa at a party, and you promised her you were going to call.
Yeah.
And you did.
Yes.
And my understanding is that the both of you fell asleep talking on the telephone. So it sounds like it was love at first sight.
I wouldn't say it was love at first sight, but it was a nice connection. It was a great connection, and I felt like there's a person that I just need to have with me and to have on my team for the rest of my life.
December 12th, 2012, you're going to be husband and wife, and you know, I would love to be. I mean, anyways, we'll talk some more about that. But what are the things, Lolisa? Here it is. I'm looking at your. Oh my goodness! I'm looking at the time. We're almost out of time. Okay, so that means my producer just brought to my attention that we are just almost out of time. You have a book, The Way I See It, and I'm sure that there were a lot of things that inspired you to read the book. But you also self-published. Publishing in itself is a task, but your decision to take your story, yours and Daryl's story, and capture it in a book and say, listen, here's hope in a book. Tell us some more about this.
Well, I always liked to write since I was a child, always writing poetry, just writing anything I could think of, and always liked to read. And once I started to get more public about the HIV, I found out that people were emailing me from different countries, from Africa, from places that I never even heard of, just asking me questions and asking me to give them advice. And I mean, some of the people were coming to me like I was God, just asking me things. Well, what should I do? And will I ever find love? And how do I not be stressed? And at that point, I was like, okay, I need to write a book.